to bring on a mascot at some stage for Emerge 21, get them to talk.
Yeah.
It's crazy the amount of it's kind of strange times sometimes as well, seeing the some of the people. Was it Doomberg? I seen a snippet of a podcast he did a couple of years back, maybe 2 years back in the bear market, and it was like, not we're not really interested in Bitcoin. We've done all the research and stuff like that, and they're a well researched organization too, Doomberg and his research team. Like they get things like oil and nuclear and stuff like that. All those markets, commodity markets, very well, and they seem to get them right as well. But when it came to Bitcoin, they were like, not really that interested. And he was on a Bitcoin show a few times, but he said, I'm going to wait for. He said I would buy it at an interesting price, and it was Peter McCormick asked him what's an interesting price, and I said 5,000. Like, and this was like 2 years ago, 5,000, and
Horse is an interesting price 2 years ago.
yeah, but it was never going to 5,000.
Oh.
But yeah, like I don't. Does that mean you wouldn't buy it at 8,000 or you wouldn't buy it at 10,000? Like if you're going to buy it at 5,000, knowing the potential, you should be buying it at much higher prices than that. So
Hmm.
yeah, but it was interesting. But what I'm getting at is like when you watch what you've watched over the few years, you've had guys with carrot avatars, guys with bird avatars, guys in suits covered head to toe. It is funny the Bitcoin community and some of the people out there. Maybe we need a
Yeah, they are quite comedic generally, like the memes. But that's a question to put out. What should be our mascot? What should it be? Should it be an animal, some kind of figure, some kind of weird creature? I don't know.
yeah,
Could be
yeah.
interesting. Which leads us into episode 8. Um, Great episode. Episode 7 was one of our most viewed, most watched episodes so far. Just after putting it out over a period of 24 hours, even it was really good. So we're obviously getting more guests on board. That's one of the things we're going to definitely do going into 2025 and break down different concepts around Bitcoin across different specialities, different areas. So yeah, it was great response from that. So definitely going to focus in on that. We've got obviously some interesting, exciting things happening now over Christmas and into the new year. We're probably not going to talk too much about it tonight, but we're going to release an actual series around Bitcoin, a specific type of series. I don't know if you want to go into that much, Chris, or just briefly mention it, or will we just keep it under wraps for now?
Yeah, keep people guessing. No, I think briefly on high level, it's more on the bullish side of Bitcoin. I know people aren't, and it'll tie in with this episode as well. People aren't always sold on Bitcoin, and there are, it's not the most easy concept to get as we all know. But some of these things can help people understand. Like I know the price. I'm sorry. Can we start this game? My head's going blank.
It's all right. No, we can't. We have to stay with it.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't got my ring light on. That's what happened.
You
No,
need,
it's not even that. I just realized too. I'm just putting my. I
I
don't
need
know
to
what
get it
happened
set
there.
up.
I just got a blank head. With how I'm going, how things are going. This will be on the bloopers. Anyway,
Flipper.
yeah,
I went through the last. Well, I didn't speak much in the last podcast because my my brain was pretty blank. Totally
yeah,
out of it.
yeah. Oh shit.
Jesus. There you go.
Um, yeah, and I find it hard to focus sometimes with this on too as well.
Seeing yourself, you mean?
No, just the light.
I just like,
I don't mind seeing myself. I think somebody else mentioned that too, seeing themselves in the camera gets them to fumble over words sometimes, like, but I don't really look at myself during when I talk to
you're
myself.
trying to look at the camera. That's the thing.
Yeah, look at you, look at the camera, just look at the guests on
Yeah.
the podcast. But yeah, but as I was saying, I think when we look back at this, like I love the privacy side of Bitcoin, and everybody's entitled to their own privacy. And we're on here in camera and grabbing the microphone and saying let's go. We obviously disclose about ourselves and our personalities and stuff like that, and our thoughts on Bitcoin. But I always find it funny when you see some of the shows that I've watched over the years, and like avatars like Doomberg and the Rational Root and GG and stuff like that, and they're all they're all very private. And
Mask.
if you were to look back maybe 10 years ago and say you're going to sit down and you're going to watch this guy that's looks like a bird or looks like a carrot that's just sitting talking on the screen about this magical internet money, you might be like, what happened to my life?
Well, we technically we should have probably came up with some really cool costumes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, you can do avatars and you can do digital things, and they follow your face about in the
Well,
screen, so you can disclose yourself. So
that would be easier.
everything's digital now. Yeah, well, you could break out the kids' costumes, like, but yeah, it just reminded me because I seen at Doomberg, it's just a snippet of one of his conversations with Peter McCormick. It was on that show in Dunburg, very well researched organization. I don't know how many's on the team, but they do seem to get the research right on everything. He's been on Bitcoin show a few times talking about macro and economics and things like that, and they seem to be well versed in commodity investing. So they kind of get things like how the oil market is going, how energy basically is going. And I learned a lot from that. But the snippet was, I don't know how far into the bear market it was, but I'm pretty sure it was about 2 years ago. It might have been around 20,000 or something like that. And he said he still hadn't been convinced on Bitcoin. Um, and again, this is a big green bird avatar floating about the screen with a masked voice, I think, as well. Maybe not. Maybe I just insulted Tim Bird by saying it's a masked voice. But yeah, his take on it was, I'm not buying Bitcoin. It is interesting, but I would be interested at a certain price. And Peter McCormick said, "What's your price?" And he said, 5,000, like $5,000. And I don't think it was ever going near $5,000. So I haven't heard anything since, but it was just an interesting clip to see how people are waiting for this dip and waiting for the lower prices, and it could bite you in the.
It is. You're always, but you always get that, and there's always that question. Again, recent interactions with people, like, is now still a good time to buy? And it's all the same thing. And my response is, well, my response before 100,000 was, well, anything under 100,000 is good. Now the response is anything under 1 million is good. But it's just, yeah, people are. It's always going to be a thing, isn't it? If you don't again understand it, what's happening, then you're always going to be driven by price, and price is what's driving interest at the moment. But it's the dips. Like there's always going to be pullbacks. At the time of recording this, there's been a bit of a pullback, like over the last few hours, like by about 8 grand. And for many people, that will scare people, and people will get shaken out. But the longer you're in the space, the longer you realize what happens with Bitcoin and how it's affected. But it's just going to continue like that. I think there's going to be ups and downs, but it's always in that upward trajectory. But it is like, have you been noticing it? Have you been finding more and more people talking about it now recently? Have you had more conversations around it? Have you had to kind of sort of change tact in how you kind of talk to people around it over the last while, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah, if we want to cover that as a topic in general, just recent developments and uh,
Hmm.
yeah, sentiment around the market at the minute. And some of it, Alan, you kind of see same old, like 4 years ago, 8 years ago, it's the same thing. And people are new to these markets too, so that's fine. What are we on? Episode 8 now, is it? Uh,
Yep, episode 8, episode 8. It
episode
is
8.
it, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like you see the same old stories, and then people who are encountering for the first time will ask those questions. But there's also, I noticed a few turning points for people as well. And like I won't dox anyone because I know Bitcoiners are very privacy orientated. Kind of like myself, although I don't have the big bird avatar. I've got my face on camera, and people know who I am.
Is it your real face? We don't know.
Well, that's true, actually. Yeah, yep. This is my real name. Um, but yeah, yeah. There's people who are still on the learning curve, and then there's people who I see at a turning point. So maybe I'll give a couple of examples, and I think you've had a couple of touch points as well with people. You talk about it in your business, you talk about it, amongst friends and stuff like that. But yeah, first of all, I think in recent news, and I'm not going to go over it. First of all, I'm not a quantum computer expert, not a cryptography expert. I know enough about it, but not enough to speak about it. But that's a topic that's come up again and again. Now, I always say two things. Yeah, I'm not an expert in this field, but also quantum computing, like play it out long enough, and it is some kind of threat to cryptography, therefore a potential threat to Bitcoin. Like that's the reality of things. But when you dig deep into it, and I've had to explain this twice over the last while, uh, like Bitcoin is probably one of the last things that you go after if you could break cryptography. for two reasons. Right now, because it's a small enough network, and once you break it, it's valueless. So why would you go after it? You go after things like nuclear codes or whatever for a country, and whole countries ransom for certain things. Like there's better ways to use better evil ways to use quantum computing to break cryptography than Bitcoin right now. Um, but also, yeah, the incentive just to break it in general isn't quite there in terms of uh, what you could what you could go after and then devalue the network completely. So, but in general, for people who have, again, I'm not going to cover this in detail, 10, 20 years, 30 years, it's estimated that the current quantum computing may catch up with Bitcoin, but that security model can be changed over time. The monetary network will remain the same, so 21 million coins. Uh, having happens every 4 years. The uh, difficult adjustment happens every 2 weeks. The blocks happen every 10 minutes. All that stays the same, but you can
Mm.
upgrade the security model. So it'll always stay ahead of quantum computing. So there's quantum computing resistant algorithms already being worked on, and it had even been talked about by Satoshi back in the day. So that's kind of one thing that keeps coming up over and over and over again. And I was asked recently, a couple of times by people and kind of explained the same thing. So there's no immediate threat to Bitcoin that anyone knows of when it comes to quantum computing, but the incentive isn't there as well to break it. When you can go after a lot of things, it'll probably be one of the last to go as well because of the power of the network. I'm sure, any any low quality secure systems, or supposedly secure systems, maybe some emails and WhatsApps and your cloud data will all be hacked well before something like Bitcoin network will be
Yeah,
hacked.
that's a good, like, I hadn't actually thought about that funny in detail when you say that, because like if you're looking at that type of structure, security model, centralized, siloed kind of information, like healthcare is going to be at risk there. Healthcare data, supposedly data, whatever way you want to say it. I think that's going to be an issue too, which again, kind of reels in and highlights the importance of decentralization of data, of your data, of healthcare data, and potentially using, public-private key cryptography. What some of the guys that I've been working with within the Nostr space have been kind of working on as well. So, no, sorry, I just when you mentioned that, I just hadn't thought through that process of the threat of quantum computing, not well, obviously within the Bitcoin space as well, but specifically in general to individual data, healthcare data, and things like that. So yeah, that's an interesting route to go down to, actually, thinking forward.
I'm pretty sure the
Um,
Fed could be taken down much quicker than the Bitcoin network. I'm pretty sure Bank of America could be taken down
well, any bank,
much
yeah.
quicker. Yeah, before. So yeah, there's bigger fish to fry right now. Now Bitcoin will grow to be probably the most likely, highly likely, the most valuable asset in the world. And but at that stage as well, then everyone because it's so valuable, everyone has a vested interest in making sure that quantum resistant algorithms stay ahead of quantum computing itself. So that'll all be developed by like people will be working on this full time to make sure that it can't be like it's more protected as it grows. Like this is a thing people don't understand sometimes. The larger Bitcoin network gets, the more powerful it is in terms of protection. Yeah, and sometimes I think the S-curve adoption is going to happen at some point over the coming years. It's going to grow faster than people realize. So yeah, it's just interesting, and those conversations have come up again. No doubt it'll come up again, and then there'll be talk about people thinking that the more coins you own, the more power you have over the network, which is completely false. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah, that guy, that was Twitter. Like, no, it wasn't even Twitter. It was somebody on Facebook. Oh, actually, I messaged you a couple of nights ago. I said I need to jump into this conversation on Facebook. I didn't because it was too late. I was too tired. But yeah, there was a couple of guys going on. Oh, it's like Bitcoin. It's created by the CIA, and sure, BlackRock owns most of it now, and they can control it and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, no, you just again, you need to dive in a few layers deeper than this and to understand what's happening. And they don't they're not grasping the concept of what decentralization is. And when you look at that chart, it's a pie chart of like who actually the distribution of coins, like these institutions, these BlackRocks, MicroStrategies, governments, sovereign nation states, as they develop and grow and buy more Bitcoin. It's only really a small percentage of the ownership of the actual coins of the full 21 million and whatever lost coins are there. So I think, yeah, people they start spouting off things, and it's like with a real confidence as well. It's like, they start, basically taking charge of the conversation on these threads on the likes of Facebook or whatever it may be, and they're just talking nonsense in a way. But in a way, in their mind, it probably makes sense to them. But ultimately, it's not. Oh, yeah, that's the if you can see the video, that's the chart I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
So what you've got, what is it there? Over 57% are owned by individuals. Um,
And these are estimates too, and I think it's probably, a year or two out of
More.
date. But yeah,
Mm.
but you can see it's very well distributed amongst individuals. But even at that, as you say, that doesn't matter. Like
No.
if the more you own, you can say more influence, but you can't change the network, and that's one thing that people have to learn. Like there's
Yeah.
only three ways to obtain Bitcoin, and by the way, these are slides that we go through with clients and people who want to learn more in our consultation package and our breakthrough series. So yeah, three ways to obtain Bitcoin. You mine it, you purchase it from an exchange, so you're exchanging your fiat for Bitcoin, or you provide a service in exchange for it peer to peer. And that's in reality the only three ways that you can do it right now. Yeah, we've got the supply schedule and things like that as well. But yeah, overall, as you say, Alan, the point is it's well distributed at the minute. I'm sure there's some entities that are going to grow that over time. It's also been adopted globally by other countries all over the world. So the US, I think, is doing a great job in getting ahead of this. But again, that doesn't mean they control Bitcoin. They're going to control a percentage of the holdings, but that doesn't mean to do anything with the network.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's separating that you don't control the network by owning more Bitcoin. It's just, yes, you could have influence over certain entities or maybe price movements potentially. Not well, depending, but obviously what we were talking about as well down the line, what future pacing as well, like the option of having Bitcoin as collateral and collateralized loans. That kind of financial infrastructure is being built out currently, and well, it's currently there in place, but it's going to become more and more commonplace, I think, as well. And I think that was again one of the key points. Actually, talking to my accountant, it was like he was asking, well, what is the price you're going to sell it? What price are you going to sell it? And it's like, well, I'm not going to sell it because, again, what I just said, the option to lend against that and hold it as an asset that you can pass through generations, and use that as collateral against, potentially a loan or whatever it may be. That's the whole concept of holding a store of value that you can, use to potentially finance via whatever fiat mechanism that may still be in place. But ultimately, as well, over a long enough time frame, generally fiat will eventually die out. I think that's the course it's on, it, depending on how long it takes. But within the next sort of obviously 10, 15, 20 years plus, there's always going to be that mechanism there. And like it or not, financial institutions will want the Bitcoin. They'll want to store the Bitcoin, hold the Bitcoin, lend out against the Bitcoin. So it's just part and parcel of the evolution of how this asset, how this monetary network, global monetary system is evolving, and it's just going to go through certain phase shifts. Some will be quicker than others. I think at the moment we're in a very probably one of the quicker ones. I think again, depending on how things go over the next few months, but I think we're witnessing a very quick phase shift in how Bitcoin's being repriced across the globe and how much kind of attention and I suppose influx of more new Bitcoiners, new individuals, countries, institutions are coming on board the network and realizing what it's all about. But yeah, it's just a matter of, you've got people have different incentives, but the general incentive that Bitcoin brings, it's the game theory and that incentive to join the network, get on board with it, get in, be part of it, store your wealth, move your purchasing power across into this asset class that is something that, nobody's ever really seen before. And again, that's again what we touched on before. That's the concept that's difficult for a lot of people to get. But yeah, what price you're going to sell it? Again, for me, I don't have a price that I'm going to sell it. I'm hopefully going to hold it as long as I can and pass it on.
Yeah, yeah, and that is another common question. But yeah, it's interesting that you're accounting to talking about it, and I think it was Rich actually called this out, like people with a finance background, economics background, sometimes it's an Achilles heel when it comes to understanding Bitcoin because you've been taught in a certain way, over years, and it's, you kind of study this stuff, and that's the world that you're in, and to
Yeah, yeah.
flip that on its head is actually a difficulty. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see your accountant, maybe in the next cycle or the cycle after, to see if like people recognize these patterns too, and not that it's just a pattern that will draw people in and trends, but when you see it going up, like I seen it happen in 2017, 2016, 2017, and very interesting, but didn't know what it was. And then whenever it happened the second time, I was like, right, I kind of seen it leading up to that time, and obviously done a lot more research and looked at back at that to the 2013 cycle and said, look, there is cycles related to this. Is it related to the halving? Is it related to the presidential cycle? Is
Mm,
it related to liquidity cycle, which I think probably is one of the closest things that it's related to, correlated to. But it's something that happens every 4 years, that triggers this, not triggers it, but yeah, influences the price of Bitcoin. And it's, again, you can say one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, the network's stable. It's the fiat fluctuations that are actually influencing the Bitcoin price right now, and there's no
mm.
no getting around that. That's the reality of things. And just as you said, there's been a bit of a dip, if we want to say, in the market today, but that's because the Fed came out and said we're going to cut some interest rates less than what we expected in 2025. And they didn't even state numbers, they just said the amount. So the fiat system, to a certain extent, still is in control as this gets adopted. And it kind of shows me that there's still people in there that don't understand it, or either very short-term thinking. So it's
Yeah,
just interesting the way people think. But I'd be interested to see your accountant, and now you've exposed them to Bitcoin, price and stuff like that, and the action, so he's seen it. And then it'll probably die down, and it might notice that, might hear about it. Bitcoin crashed, as you always hear, and
yep.
then in 2 years' time, it'll shoot past the price that he thought was the high, and
Mm.
it crashed from. Um, and then you have to consider the cycle after that. Then, if he sees the same thing, is that going to really open his eyes? Like, so, price action does definitely influence, but it'd be just interesting to see how his thoughts now evolve, that you've put it on the spotlight for him, and he's going to follow
Yeah.
your accountant, for many years, and he'll see how it's benefiting.
Yeah, because it's one of those things as well. It generally does take you a couple of cycles, and it depends on how deep you go into studying Bitcoin or learning about it or where you're getting your information from. It does take that time watching to see, well, this is actually, moving up, dropping back down, up, down. But then you realize and come to the concept, and it's like, as you say, like you're getting higher highs going on. There's that up to the right chart. Um, but the words were as well. It's like, oh, it'll be interesting to watch. And I've heard that from quite a few people. Oh, it's interesting to watch. It's interesting to watch. And again, it would have been, I suppose, yeah, myself back in, again, even 2020, as I mentioned to you, just before one of my boys was born. I was sitting near the hospital and watching, like sitting back and watching Bitcoin go 17,000, 20,000, 22,000, and then realizing, shit, I need to get on board here. I need to start getting more Bitcoin because this is running away from me. But yeah, it's that conviction as well. But it'll happen, with people. People have their own journeys and people have their own things going on. But it is and very interesting again what Rich said on the previous. It is, I think it is people within the financial system and institutions and accountancy, or whatever it may be, that have been brought up and taught in a certain way, in a certain system, a structured system. When something new comes along, a new technology that totally disrupts all kind of models that they've realized from previous, experience, they find it difficult to kind of move over to that and actually even, maybe invest a bit of money or put a bit of money into it to see what happens. They're very reluctant to because they're just so ingrained, as most of society is in the system. And we're bound to be like we've been living in this experiment, this fiat experiment for, well over 100, well, yeah, around about 100 years now, isn't it, really, technically?
Or
So
yeah, if you count back when the Fed started, and
yeah.
I know there's been versions of this before as well, but yeah, we're 100 years now.
So it's hard to, see outside that. So, but no, it is, and yeah, yeah, you're getting people, a lot more people talking about it. Like I've had conversations in soft play areas, butcher shop, in the swimming pool a couple of weeks
And
ago.
what kind of conversations, like, was it people? Was it prompted by you? Did they ask you?
No, no, again, weirdly not. I've got to the point where I don't start I would never. really start a conversation around Bitcoin with people unless they want to, know about it. So this is the first time this particular like period of time, I suppose over the last what 4 or 5 months, it's the first time people have actually been coming up and starting a conversation around Bitcoin. I think I mentioned previously a fellow like optometrist colleague started talking randomly to me around it, and we spent over an hour talking about it.
Market top signal, Alan.
Yeah, well, yeah, optometrist, that's the market top. Sell, sell, sell. But it's a similar conversations where it's kind of surface level stuff where people are like, pushbacks are kind of like, well, it's not physical, I can't hold it, so I can't really, trust it. Um, and then just other things around like, well,
So how do you explain that? I know it's a long explanation, but what's your go-to when people say it's not physical?
well, it comes back to this whole concept of intrinsic value that people keep banging on about as well. It's like, what's the intrinsic value? And like the economy and economics are so complex. It's not just a black and white thing. You've got the concept of technically it's all subjective. It's what's of value to you. So with Bitcoin itself, because of all its dynamics, the concept of the network, the global supply, the market cap, 21 million, decentralized, secure. Um, the value comes within that context of what it is. So when you break it down and compare that, effectively comparing it to gold, which most people do, gold's physical, gold's got all these properties. Bitcoin's like gold in a way, but it's far superior in that as we've talked about it before, you move it at the speed of light, self-custody, you don't have all this counterparty risk and things like that. So subjectively for me and for millions of other people, this Bitcoin thing, this network, this asset is way more valuable than what gold is. And then when that kind of comes into the context of the conversation around that, well, you can come at it from many different angles, but that's basically what I said to him. It's like, it doesn't have to be a physical thing. I'm not sure what way would you describe it, or what way would you go about explaining that? Because it's
Uh,
funny, I always get to the point where sometimes people come at me with these different things like what your guy said, and I would all this stuff comes to the front of your mind. You're like, well, where do you start with this? And then all of a sudden you just afterwards you're like, oh, I should have said that or I should have said this. It's like, where do you start sometimes? But like what's your go-to in that respect? If somebody
I,
come up and said, no, it's not physical, I don't trust it, I can't hold it.
yeah,
What do you
I
say?
must start writing a couple of bullet points and have them on hand and that I can search on my phone if somebody
It's not a
writes.
bad idea.
Heads.
It's
Yeah, maybe we might do that actually as an article on the site.
because the problem is I find I take way too long to explain it all, but then it is quite complex in that respect
Well,
from that point of view. But
how physical is the internet?
well, yeah, again, you go like that too. You could come from
Yeah,
that angle. What's the
yeah.
value of the internet?
Like the like CDs could replace, like is the music in your phone, not because you can't touch it. Accessible.
Dematerialization.
Yeah, yeah. So like we're in a digital world. Like a lot of things are data points sent from one node or one computer to another. Like that's effectively how we live today, quite a lot of our lives. So yeah, the physical world and the cyberspace as people like to call it are intertwined now at this stage. Like there's no need to have a lot of physical goods when they can be digital. Like the digital version, I think somebody asked that question many times before. Like, name me an analog version that's better than a digital version, and like it's very
It's
different.
evolution, yeah.
Yeah,
But also like you think about money first of all. You say money, currency. Like how much actual physical currency is there going around? It's
yeah,
like what, 3%, 5% or something stupid. Nobody actually knows. Again, the governments don't know. They don't know how much money's actually out there, which is ridiculous too. So like most of our money nowadays is numbers on a screen. It's all digital anyway, so it's not physical.
yeah,
Yes, you can have an asset, a house, a property. You have a physical brick and mortar. I suppose he was more of a real estate guy anyway, so probably maybe that's his context of how he thinks around things.
yeah,
But again, it's the concept as you say, it's the digitalization of everything at the moment.
yeah,
And yes, you're always going to live in a physical world, with physical things. But what's the monetary, what is that monetary asset? What's the premium? Where does that go? Where does that flow? Where does the energy flow? And I think Bitcoin's that network with the flow of energy is pushing towards it. It's gone to what, over a $2 trillion asset in a matter of what, 15 years. Like that's pretty crazy to start with from nothing to that. And because of its design and structure, it's designed to, basically gobble up all of these other asset classes, these other monetary, assets that are out there, even property, real estate, stocks. Yeah, it's trying to like get that real, like what's the elevator pitch for answering those kind of questions? That's the golden nugget that you need to try to find somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, and people will get it in their own time as well. Like, and sometimes it's multiple touches with it, and a person's naturally curious. Sometimes it's through pain, sometimes through education, sometimes through interest, sometimes it's through yeah, a certain situation that happened to somebody that made them recognize, like you can go very close to home and say, well, inflation is a challenge for everybody, so I need something to combat inflation. I can see the prices going up. That's an easy one. But like say, for example, the Canadian truckers protest, like that it would automatically when you get your bank account frozen, you
Mm,
automatically seek something that will make that not happen again because that was painful for those guys. So that brings you towards it. So yeah, and then again, just people that are investors looking for a better outsized return, um,
mm,
they'll look at the price action. So there's loads of different reasons for that to happen. I think we're at the stage of the market, Alan, which I find fascinating that there's a bit of polarization. I think the haters are hating Bitcoin more than previously because obviously of the price action and people get they have regrets like they missed out,
emotions.
they
Mm,
sold, they waited for it up, they waited for better what they think is a better opportunity, or they didn't go hard enough and it's run away from them. So they're trying to drag the market back by being negative about things and thinking that
mm,
might work. But you see that. But then there's also I think what's interesting then, apart from what we're looking to do is people, educate new people on it. There's people who maybe tiptoed over the last couple of years who their balance is growing, their stack is growing in Bitcoin and fiat terms. Um, and now they're taking more interest in it. And I actually see that happening at the minute. And while they watch it, it's nearly playing out in their head. So I spoke to a guy, and again, won't share any private details or personal details about this person, but yeah, smart guy, smart investor, done well, very well for himself. Very tied to real estate again. Over the years, spoke to him about Bitcoin over the years, and I kind of you know, again, question it as you should, but not really bought into it. A 15-year asset versus an asset that's been hundreds of thousands of years old
mhm,
is hard to argue against. And real estate that have a great track record. And when I say does, still does compared to everything else, but
mm,
Bitcoin. Um, but I could see the change now that it's got to the stage of the market, and this person where, from owning multiple real estate to come to the conclusion that Bitcoin is the only asset that this person wants to hold. And that took years, and watching probably two cycles previous,
mm,
not participating, maybe participating here and there, dabbling, whatever, but then
mm,
watching it and throughout the year, obviously seeing the developments in the ETFs and seeing what's going on in the US and obviously following a lot more on Twitter. They've I would say like fully orange pilled now.
mm,
And the words just recently to me were, I'm done with real estate. Like I can't deal with the maintenance, the time, the effort, the taxes, uh the accounting side of things, the uh fees, the people
It's a
even
lot.
as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so the headaches that come with real estate. And this is a person who, I mean, deep into real estate
Mm,
and now is what I would consider a Bitcoiner. And I think that's going to happen more and more over time. But it's just interesting that, as I say, new people get their eyes open and they might say what you said previously. Oh, I'll keep an eye on this or I'll watch it. I'll see how it goes. The haters are getting stronger in their hate. Uh,
mm,
I would say the bulls as well, who are already Bitcoiners, are gathering more conviction. But the people who dabbled in it in the previous maybe cycle or previous before are gaining that conviction now, and I think they're converting into Bitcoiners, and the price does drive you to study more and understand more and think deeper about it, and I
mm.
can see that happen.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting with this conversation. Like as I say, an interesting guy. And yeah, not anywhere near a Bitcoiner a few years ago, and not
Mm.
and all in real estate, and now flipped on its head.
Yeah, I think it will be a common trend, I think, happening. There seems to be, again, it's natural as well. It's just the evolution, and it's a big step. When when you're going from owning a few properties, don't know, whatever, maybe 10, 5, 10, 15 properties, depending, like it's a big move to make into another asset that, is completely outside of the normal dynamics of what you're used to. But it comes again with that time in the market, I guess, and watching it. And I suppose the market's been more it's become more transparent in that if you've been in for a cycle, you've witnessed all the FTX crash and all the shenanigans that's gone on around that as well. So I suppose going through that learning curve again, coming from that point of pain potentially for many people, it clarifies again what Bitcoin is as opposed to everything else. So and then when you got that clarity around Bitcoin, and that again, I said conviction that many times over the last few episodes, but when you get the clarity and the conviction, it makes sense. It's the logical step to take for your wealth building portfolio, I suppose you could call it, because there is
And
no second best, as we know
yeah, but
at this
what
point.
is that? What it's interesting too because what does that do to house prices? Like you imagine, this is uh one out of 100 people think like this now, so that's effectively 1% of the real
Mm.
estate market now that might come online, and that's not a huge shift, but that 1% soon becomes 2%, and then like the price of real estate then because the demand is going down for it, the supply is coming on board. Real estate goes like this, and Bitcoin goes like this faster, and that's where I was saying like this S
Yeah.
curve adoption is coming at some point.
It's a crazy thing because then it's like an organism, isn't it? And again, it's game theory across different levels because that's game theory in itself, and that, as you say, instead of all the stress and hassle and just all those really issues that you have with real estate, they simply just take their money, pop it into Bitcoin, let it sit there, sit back, no stress, no hassle. Then real estate prices drop. People, it becomes more affordable for people. There's not so many people having to rent and, scrape by, etc. So technically over a longer time horizon, again, it should make real estate prices cheaper for everyone, more affordable for people coming through from college, from school, being able to actually afford a house and shelter for themselves, which brings real estate back to its utility value where it should be. Because like over the last again, what, 60, 70, 80 years, real estate's become that place to put your money to grow and store, or, well, to store your wealth, but to grow your wealth. It's financialized into that point where that's, any wealthy individual, they own real estate, or that was the historical way to build your wealth. Whereas now in this kind of Bitcoin age, we could call it, Bitcoin's the asset you want to put your money, your value into, because again, that then comes around in a circle where it actually improves society, improves humanity, makes things more affordable for people, and also takes all that stress and hassle away from the whole concept of trying to own and manage real estate, from fees, tenant issues, all that kind of hassle, which again, I haven't personally had experience with, but from talking to people, it seems to be a bit of an issue.
And this is playing out in real life now. Like I see it. Like people might have flipped their spare change into Bitcoin. People might have then
Mm.
thought, I'm gonna convert my savings and the Bitcoin or DCA every week, every month, whatever it is. And then they gain more conviction, and then you start thinking, well, if I have a stock portfolio and it's outperforming that, maybe I'll flip some of the stock. And it might start off as small, but it snowballs over time. And I think we're at the part, and this is where as well, people can get carried away, and this is why sometimes we have cycles too. Like a lot of what we're talking about is market psychology.
Yeah.
People might even take it to the extremes and start saying, well, I'm going to leverage up here, and this is the new future of money. And I just think we're slightly early for that. Although the price could pump so hard, over the next couple of years that when it eventually does crash, it could crash to a much higher price than what it is today, and that's where people kind of both benefit and will get caught out. So
Mm.
I still think it's nuanced enough of a topic amongst the wider population, although it is that mainstream um, spotlight is on Bitcoin right now, and understanding is there, but I still think it's a bit nuanced for people not to have these market cycles. And again, people can take advantage of those. Like if you see the price crash as I do
As
use
is
the word
done today.
crash, then and you understand that that's an opportunity as well. So yeah, I don't think we're quite there. My thesis, and I've kind of I said this to you I think recently. I can't see it going more than 5 or 6 cycles from here, like without people knowing that that's an obvious thing and you can just play it, how it is. These cycles are going to end at some stage, whether it's this cycle, next cycle, the cycle after. I think between anywhere between this cycle and 6 cycles, I can't see it going any. more beyond there. And you could say, well, there's always been liquidity cycles for decades and stuff like that, and it's just human behavior, and it's
Mm.
it's just animalistic instincts to and tribal instincts to do what we're doing. But yeah, the S curve adoption for me is coming at some point.
Mm.
But it's
You've
just
always got
optimistic now. Yeah.
yeah, you've always got things like again, you don't again these black swan things, or could there be a massive recession or some kind of depression or some kind of conflict event, but you never know what's around the corner. But again, it's something that you just have to be prepared for, I suppose, is in a way. But again, I think Bitcoin effectively will always be that safe haven anyway in that respect because it's coming back to that, money you can own yourself, money you give self-custody of as well. Whereas, other aspects of your wealth could be, dismantled very quickly, even like real estate property as well. If there's war issues or anything like that, if your house could be flattened in an instant. So yeah, it's trying to just navigate the space and navigate the world at the moment. It's a strange place, but yeah, for me, Bitcoin is that again, I've said it before, Bitcoin's that hope for anyone coming through now or anybody with some kind of, real hope or real kind of, what they want for their future. Do they want prosperity for themselves and their family? Or do they just want to kind of slug away, work hard, have to pay ridiculous amounts of fiat taxes and, just get by effectively, whereas Bitcoin brings that new dynamic into the space. And it is a challenge because again, that wasn't it Jerome Powell from the Fed just said today at the time of this recording, it was that they don't have any intention of writing a law to own or to hold Bitcoin. And that was the Fed statement. But again, that's not the government. The Feds, again, people get confused with that too. It's a completely private entity in itself, the
Mhm.
Federal Reserve, whereas, governments, what Trump's intending to do, it's a very different thing. But I think that probably shifted the market a wee bit as well, what he said around Bitcoin specifically.
Yeah, but
Um,
that opens it up too. Like, why is somebody's words influencing the price of assets like over time? Like, it should be transparent and
yeah,
programmed, and people see how it's going to play out, so that we can work around the monetary system
yeah,
rather than somebody someday getting in a room with a couple of people and thinking, I think this is best. I don't know, it's more complicated than that,
yeah,
but like they can make decisions and they can make wrong decisions. Why not just have the future-proofed programmable schedule, transparent, that everybody knows and sees, and you don't have to worry about that, and you don't have to worry
yeah,
about what somebody says next because it's already there, and you can
yeah.
spend less time worrying about that and focusing on that and focus on like building
Making,
value for the
yeah,
world. Yeah.
yeah, being productive, making
Yeah.
decisions for yourself and your
Well,
family.
one thing you said there, Alan, that I haven't heard many people talk about as well, but like you mentioned recession there, that like black swans and stuff like that. I actually think that's another catalyst for Bitcoin, and
Mm,
I, because it's been around since 2008, and we'll say it was like it was born. We know already. We've talked about this before. Like, it was born, from decades before. Like, it's an idea for digital money, but like it was born during not out of the recession. That wasn't the reason why it happened in the great financial crisis of 2007, 2008.
mm,
But it didn't really experience a recession then until 2020, and that really lit people's eyes open. I would kind of go out on a limb and say this, and again, not trying to predict the future, but I would say we're probably two recessions away from everybody understanding Bitcoin. So
mm,
when you think about it, the next one, I think will further, open people's eyes to what Bitcoin is, and the next recession too. I always say, somebody else actually coined this phrase, but recessions are outlawed. Like, you're not allowed to have recessions.
yeah.
They'll cover it up by stimulus at this stage. But if there is a crash, an unexpected one that people can't handle at that time, and when I say people can't handle, people can't print money fast enough to handle. It happens. It ruins people's businesses, lives.
Mm,
This is a boom and bust cycle, fiat system. If that happens, I think it'll onboard a hell of a lot more people onto Bitcoin.
yeah.
That'll open the eyes, and it only can take one more after that. Like, that'll be the
True.
final straw. And when you
Yeah.
look at it as well, like, recessions happen on average, I think.
10, 15 years.
Not even. I think regularly. Well, major recessions, yeah, are
Uh,
something like 10, 15 years. But I think you can count a recessionary period every 8, 9 years or something like that. So in theory, if 2020 was the last one, wasn't it?
yeah,
COVID.
COVID.
So yeah, before the end of 2040, like, everyone should be wary of what should be knowledgeable on what Bitcoin is through the pain of a recession or two between that
Mm.
time. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's two recessions and it's game over for fiat. That's my
Yeah, well, no,
outlook.
you're right enough because that was COVID. That was the catalyst for me to, deep dive more into monetary history and how it all functioned and ultimately leads you to Bitcoin then. So yeah, you're probably quite accurate in that respect. Yeah,
So how long until the next two recessions?
it's the question.
Yeah, if it was 2020, you
2025.
add 8 years, 2028, add 8 years, 2036, all done and dusted by 2036. Yeah. But
Yeah, it'll
yeah,
be
it's just
interesting.
interesting where we are now and where it's going to go in the future. But I can see definitely the sentiment's changed. As I say, the haters are stronger, out vocal, and the people who have dabbled in it are definitely stronger. The bulls are obviously more convicted, and the people who have been watching it are now starting to get more curious.
Yeah. I think it's what you said as well, like the haters, it's something for us, I suppose, to be aware of as well, that we just need to keep plodding along as well and stand up against that kind of stuff because you will get that. You usually get the haters are normally more vocal in respect to, trying to knock you down and say things. Not that we've had any real issues that way, but it's something that we're gonna probably have to just grow a thicker skin against as well. And sort of, if you can reason with people, fair enough. But some people just don't want to listen. They just want to spout off things. But that is like you see that in market cycles as well. And when certain things happen, people get way more vocal, and it's usually the same entities on on the likes of Twitter as well, which become kind of more comedic in many respects. But um, as Rich alluded to in the previous episode again, which was a great episode, um, this is a serious topic. You can take it lighthearted in many respects, and as we mentioned about with the memes and stuff, but it's deadly serious. It is serious. People need to really understand this, and I think if you can, like again, this is coming into the Christmas period. This episode's being released now just before Christmas. Like now's the time when you have a bit of time off work. Watch back at a few of our episodes, the podcast episodes, the YouTube channel. If you have any questions, reach out because literally now's the time. If you have a few hours here and there, if the kids are playing with their toys or whatever it may be, over Christmas, dive into a bit of Bitcoin and get that education around it. And don't be afraid to ask questions because again, I think a lot of people are, and as we've always said, people approach it as a skeptic, and it's natural to do that, but it's past the point of kind of being overly skeptical about because when you see what's happening in the market, and a lot of people don't, a lot of people are just sitting in their their daily lives, but what's happened over the last, from the ETFs, especially within financial TradFi, traditional financial institutions, this is like probably nothing that we've ever seen before within financial context of what's happening. Like it's transforming a lot of people's and institutions, like massive institutions' opinions around money and how they store their money and how they manage their money. And when you have Bitcoin as the hardest form of money, effectively, they're going to want it, and there's no reason why you shouldn't have it as well. So yeah,
You're being overly bullish, Alan. So maybe
not
maybe
at
leads
all.
us on to maybe leads us on
Not
to
bullish enough.
yeah. Bullish enough is the next recession is going to end fiat, not two recessions. I'm being bearish. Yeah, I know we're going to change temporarily, pivot on our podcast as well to do the line up get. Well, I suppose we're always going to do money series between well as long as we exist as a company, we'll be doing this. I think the main theme of podcasts is for us to educate, us to talk about Bitcoin. We can talk about recent events. We can talk about certain topics. We will get into more technical discussions as well in the future. And so that's one side of it. The guest side, which I was very impressed with the last and got great feedback on it too. We'll bring guests on the show throughout from time to time. But yeah, we'll run some money series. I think we're going to do one now coming up called the Bullish Bitcoin series and kind of show more. I think it was a Safety and was talking about this a while ago. You shouldn't gloat. It's not a nice trait to gloat about Bitcoin and how well it's done, how well you've done, and you're right and you're wrong. But how many people's lives have you actually improved or changed or maybe even saved by really not pushing people towards Bitcoin, but educating them and giving them the black and white. This is how it's likely to play out. Like there's no guarantees in life, but there's a high certainty around certain things. And if we can deliver that message to people and get people on board, then yeah, I think we should. So probably maybe between 4 and 6 episodes of basically how we see Bitcoin as being unstoppable, how we see the collapse of fiat and rise of Bitcoin, how Bitcoin destroys all our assets, how adoption is happening, and basically how eventually we're going to end up with the value of the world divided by 21 million. So everything divided by 21 million. And I think it'll be interesting for people to see, and people aren't seeing it the way they should be seeing it. I'm not saying it's a completely black and white subject, and there is a lot of nuance, and I like the nuance side of things. But yeah, there's a lot more to this, and it's a lot bigger deal than people realize. So I think that again, we don't like to do price predictions and stuff like that and overhype it, but I think it's good to do a mini series of going, look, this is how we see it. This is our opinions and our views on things. This is the reality of things, and then look, we'll do a couple of different series, then maybe a technical series, and um, yeah, whatever. We'll keep bringing mini series along this podcast journey of ours.
Yeah, and it's just about touching on it, from in a positive light, and showing that this is again hope for the future. This is a positive thing. A lot of the news channels and mainstream, like they come at it from the negative angles on certain things. And funny, I just remembered there about, and it's something we'll touch on another episode, but about the energy wastage. Did you see that?
Well, that's
Um,
another one that comes up as well, and I think yeah, I've seen it many times, but I don't know if the
but
specific.
the figure, there's this website. It's called
Ah,
wastedwind.energy.
the UK, is it UK?
The UK based
Yeah,
one. Like
seen it.
there's today, well, it was the 15th of December. They wasted over 11.5 million pounds by like the costs involved of switching off wind turbines and buying energy elsewhere. So it's all like stranded energy, not being able to use renewable sources of energy instead of being able to actually go and convert that into something that's going to like maybe give them a bit of monetary value, premium storage, or like a battery to store that wealth, and which is obviously Bitcoin. So literally hooking up a bit of a Bitcoin mining operation around it, which a lot of countries are looking at. But it's also like the people that are running these policies. Well, I won't name names, but they're like obviously government officials, but it's just they're totally deluded in many respects. I suppose they've been given an agenda, they've just ran with it. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just following their rules and instructions. But yeah, that kind of thing as well. Like the fact that it could totally transform, countries, whatever principalities, locations using Bitcoin mining as such, as opposed to like just wasting energy with renewable sources in many respects that are set up not really efficiently for the structure of the system that they're involved with. But yeah, there's a whole lot of positivity around what Bitcoin brings, and it's just yeah, this the bullish series on this will highlight pretty much all of those kind of concepts. So I think that'll bring people into more of a positive way of thinking around it, and probably hopefully push them to the point of wanting to learn more about it as well. Because these aren't things that are made up out of thin air. These are factual, you know, again regarding energy stuff as well. Like there's peer-reviewed, research papers written around this that totally debunk all this false information around wasted energy and Bitcoin's, wasting all this energy and costing nations this, that, and the other. It's a lot of nonsense around that. So it's getting the clarity and getting the facts out to people, and that's what we're here for as well, obviously.
Yeah. Looking forward to recording that series with you, Alan. I think we'll get back into the guest list, and then I know there's a couple of people in Ireland as well, just on the topic of mining that are
Mm,
like I understand the mechanics of mining, but there's a lot more activity going out there, and again, not a energy expert at all.
mm,
Interesting topic to me, and done a bit of research on it. But yeah, there's people out there that understand this better than us, and we can get them on to talk through it.
yeah.
I have a few off the top of my head that we should reach out to for sure, even in the Bitcoin Network Ireland. I know Niall,
Mhm.
not put him under pressure if he's listening to this, but I would like to see him on this podcast as well, and a couple of others. So yeah, but yeah, like there's loads of topics out there for us to cover now over the next few years, and yeah, there'll be no shortage of content, guests, and mini series.
Yeah, cool. We'll probably leave it at that for now. Anyway, Chris, I think we've gone, I don't even know how long we've gone for, but um, I'll probably, well, for this episode, obviously it'll be Christmas. It is Christmas week. This will be out. So I hope everybody has a nice time, enjoys Christmas with their family and whatever they may be doing. Just take it easy for a few days if you can, if you're off work. Take time to learn a bit more about Bitcoin, and you'll be set for the new year.